All right, let's run it down that way then. Starting off with the quarterback position, Deshaun Watson is sitting there, man. Obviously, he blew his shit out, so he's not going to be starting this next year. No one wants him to start
He's
next
not.
year. Anyways,
I don't even think he's playing next year. To be honest with you,
no, blown out his Achilles. I don't think so. I think this comes down to their first round pick, their second in the draft, Ward or Sanders, whoever's kind of left over there. I haven't heard anything up to this point on who they prefer over one guy or the other. If, like, let's say they prefer Cam Ward and Shadeur's the only one sitting there though because Cam went first, I don't see them going another direction. I think that'd be really stupid if I'm being honest. I think they should pick Shedeur if that's who's sitting there. I think that they should pick Cam if that's who's sitting there. Do you think they should do anything else besides that?
absolutely not. That it's hard to fix this team to have an in-depth conversation with it because they do have talent all over the place.
Sure.
Their biggest issue is offensive line and wide receiver, offensive line and quarterback. I don't think we're gonna hear too much about which way they prefer until the number one overall pick is solidified because you don't want them to come out and say a bunch of stuff about how much they love Cam and then find out that Cam's going first and they have to kind of, oh no, we love Shador also. So I
Yeah.
think it'll be a little bit quiet until more information comes out on who's going number one. But yeah, they definitely have to draft the quarterback.
Yep, and it's funny I say that as 40 minutes ago, the came out that New York, the Giants prefer Shedeur in the draft over Cam if they're able to get up and in the top 2 picks. Funny enough. Anyways, Cleveland Browns though. Yeah, I just whether Deshaun was healthy or not, I don't think you go into that position where you can start him at this point. Not anymore. I know the offensive line is really bad. I know he's pressured a whole lot, and I know he was sacked a lot, but he's just not the player that he was supposed to be. He had, as he'll tell you multiple times over, he had one great, phenomenal year being kind of average, before that. And then he has all his contract stuff, weird things go on. And now he's with the Cleveland Browns, the guaranteed contract, and absolutely screwing them in cap space at this point. So yeah, Cam or Shador, either one. I'm not sure which one's more liable to be successful. Man, I like Shador better in the draft, but the you can't deny the what Cam potentially has for himself in the future as his potential can grow. Looking at the running back position, though, Nick Chubb is a free agent. It's our first free agent started to really talk about. The backup is Jerome Ford. Pierre Strong is also there. Both those guys will be on the roster next year. Resign or do you let Nick Chubb walk, Drew?
I'm bringing back Nick Chubb. He's said a couple of times that he only wants to play in Cleveland. Cleveland's already said that he's going into their circle or ring of honor or whatever. He's only 29.
Yeah.
Coming off that injury, I still think he has a little juice. We saw what Saquon did this year. We saw what Derrick Henry did this year. Aaron Jones.
Yep.
Like I would bring him back at a team friendly deal. I think he'd take the team friendly deal because I'm not exactly sure what his market on the free agent market is. I can't imagine it's all that high.
I
And
don't think so.
I'm signing a solid number 2 behind him. Jordan Mason is a free agent this year. I think that he's going to get a lot of interesting phone calls come free agency from a lot of these teams that need a beefed up running back room. And that would be something I would be interested in if I was the Cleveland Browns. I would definitely be bringing Chubb back and signing a solid number 2 guy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, especially man, at the end of the day, the Cleveland Browns have negative $29 million in cap space as it sits today. So what they do is going to be pretty limited. They're definitely going to have to make some cuts, a lot of smaller guys. I do have some suggestions about cuts as well once we get around to some of the starters on this team. But yeah, Nick Chubb taking a team friendly deal. I think, yeah, like you said, he wants to stay in Cleveland. A solid backup right behind him is definitely not a bad way to go. You have guys like Chase Edmonds, Samaje P. Ryan, Cam Akers is going to bounce around. It feels like forever until he finds a spot. But some of those guys are definitely, I mean, Elijah Mitchell is probably going to get a deal somewhere. So guys like that, I think, are definitely up for some type of backup role right behind him. Again, you got to do stuff on a budget. Nick Chubb is that budget player, and you bring back a fan favorite. Looking at the wide receiver positions now, you have Jerry Juder. Nice. Jerry Judy is coming back next year. Obviously, had a fantastic year. Shout out to him after wanting out, and he's proving he's actually a pretty solid player. Cedric Tillman, I'm a big fan of. I was a big fan of him coming out of the draft, and he had a couple pretty solid weeks, so he's going to be coming back as well. Elijah Moore is going to be a free agent. David Bell is also another young player who's going to be still on that roster. All you have really is just Elijah Moore going out the door. I think you need to bring someone else in. I just don't think that you have the money to bring anyone else in at this point. So I'm not sure if they really make any moves at the wide receiver position. I certainly don't think that you bring back Elijah Moore, especially since he wanted out anyways. And at the wide receiver position for free agency, I don't think there's anywhere you can go unless you have someone in mind that's on some type of budget deal you can bring in. It's going to make an immediate impact instead of some of these younger guys.
I honestly, I think they just got to stick with what they got. I
Yeah,
feel like the biggest way to make an impact on this team is really just get the quarterback, draft the offensive line, and try to find an impact player on the cheap. They're Luckily they do have some players that don't have any more guaranteed salaries, so I think they can make some moves to get under the cap. But the players that don't have guaranteed salaries that are gonna save you a lot of money are still good players for your team. So it's gonna be a tough offseason for Cleveland for certain.
sure. Yeah. I think the biggest thing looking now at the offensive line, I think the biggest thing looking at it as a whole, Jack Conklin is the glaring issue in my eyes. A guy who you could save, I think, $14 million by cutting. A guy who only played a handful of games this year, 8 games this year, 4 games last year. He's been up and down in his play as well. You have a guy right behind him and Dewan Jones who can come in and can start in place of him. So you save that $14 million. That's a big chunk of money right there. That's almost half the money that you're missing for dead cap or negative cap space right now. I mean, they do have dead cap, by the way, just Amari Cooper, like fucking ridiculous. But yeah, so I think cutting Jack Conklin saves you a lot of money. Go ahead and slide in Dewan Jones there. The rest of the guys, we kind of already talked about. You keep the rest of them. Joel Batoni, their center is pretty solid. Wyatt Teller. Even if you didn't want to keep some of these guys, again, they're solid. Zach Zinter is a rookie who he was pretty touted coming out. I feel like he could end up sliding in a position if you really want to move anyone around. But the rest of these guys, I don't think are super cuttable to save a ton of money. Except again for Jack Conklin, Dewan Jones, and slides right inside of there. At the left tackle position, though, you do have a kind of a glaring hole. Jarek Wills played there, and he's fucking awful. I think that's where you start to want to fix it in the draft at that point. So any of the late round tackles, at late first, early second round tackles, I think is what you're looking at for the second round. Was his name Josh Connerly, Cameron Williams, or if any of those guys are gone, try to maybe hope and pray that some of the other edge rushers are going to be there because edge is the other part that they kind of need a lot of help on as well. Hope and pray Mike Green is there at the early second round, even though he's getting a lot of first round talks right now. Yeah, so I think the left tackle position is a fixable position in the draft, specifically in the second round, is where you want to look, I think, for Cleveland.
PFF has a really cool thing where they basically one free agent for every team, and they have Cornelius Lucas at tackle as an idea for the Cleveland Browns. He's 33. He's not going to command a lot of money, and he is the second highest ranking pass blocking PFF grade free agent to hit the market out of this class. So to me, this draft is so critical for the Cleveland Browns. I think we're going to look at the
Yep.
2025 draft as if they're trash in 3 years, it's because they messed up this draft. And so if it were me, I'm obviously going quarterback, and then I might invest 2 or 3 picks on this offensive line. They have 4 picks in the top 100. They do need some secondary help because Denzel Ward is a dog, and then no one else could stay healthy. There is a defensive player that they need to get rid of ASAP, get him off that team because he's been a disappointment. But yeah, the draft is where they got to fix this offensive line issue.
Yeah, I'm absolutely right there with you. That's with our offensive side. If you're ready to move on to defensive, we can, starting off with that defensive line specifically. The defensive line, you got Miles Garrett. He's supposed to come back. Dalvin Tomlinson, he's supposed to come back. Shelby Harris, he's supposed to come back. You do have a rookie sitting right behind him, Mike Hall Jr. From Ohio State. He's supposed to be pretty good. I actually was pretty high on him, at least as a pass rushing interior defensive lineman specifically. And Isaiah McGuire is supposed to come back. That's where I think you need the most help on this defensive line is another edge rusher. I think that is just so critical for them too. Feels like they've been looking for another edge rusher for the play on the opposite side of Myles Garrett, and they haven't found that person yet. They've made attempts. They just haven't been able to pull the trigger and actually have anyone to perform, unfortunately. So I'm kind of curious on where we kind of want to go for this one because you could say, hey, if it doesn't work out at the tackle position the second, you could look for an edge rusher, or the third round, you could look for an edge rusher there as well. Did you have any free agents that maybe Cleveland should take a look at? Once again, we're looking at people that are more budget friendly deals that could potentially come in and make an impact immediately or exceed that contract, right? Zach Bond type player who comes in, exceeds that type of contract. Um, that's what we're kind of looking at right here. I'm not sure if you had anyone specifically in mind. It's kind of hard to try to find any budget edge rushers for a team that's negative $29 million in cap. It's obviously.
Yeah, I mean the Browns did do a good job. I think they're rolling over 41 million in cap or whatever. So they do have a little bit of leniency. Obviously, they did that thing with Deshaun Watson's contract. They extended it out a year but didn't add any money. Their safety, he's coming into the last year. Thornhill, he's been trashed. He's definitely a huge cut candidate for them. That's going to save them money. But the words that you just said, budget friendly edge rusher, generally are not, you know, they tried this with like a Jadeveon Clowney and they
Mhm.
still have dead cap because of him, you know. So I don't
Darius
exactly
Smith,
know
still $14 million
one
against
thousand
with him. I mean,
one
crazy.
yeah, 1000%. And so I again, with the way the defense is now, if you're gonna find money for the defense, I would look into bringing in secondary help
Mm,
and then just letting the defensive line do the defensive line thing and solve that in the draft is what. Again, this is a huge draft for these guys. They have to nail this because they got 2 more years of hell under this Deshaun Watson contract. But in 2027, they're gonna have a shit ton of cap space, at least 70 million. So
yeah, definitely.
more than that, Miles Garrett probably is not even on the team in 2027. So
It's definitely a possibility, and it sucks for them. I mean, a guy who's it's hard to nail first round picks any better than that. But goddamn, man, he's been so fucking good, and he's been such a class act, and he's been a community upstanding guy for Cleveland. So it would suck to lose him because you can't build more because of as good as this defense has been. It's just not been enough when fuck it all up with one of the worst trades in NFL history.
I just even Hassan Reddick is still scheduled. You know, they're estimating 16 million a year for Hassan Reddick. So it's just I don't know if you can find what you need in free agency that's going to make a big enough impact for you.
Sure. Looking at the linebackers now, you obviously have fantastic JOK, but he got hurt at the end of the season. You're not sure the type of player that he might be coming into next year. Jordan Hicks is going to be staying on the team as well. I think this team needs another linebacker. And I think this is where you can definitely find a budget friendly option at the linebacker spot, whether you're doing it purely because you need a linebacker to fill in for JOK because he's not going to be 100% ready, or you need a linebacker who is going to play on the field with those other two guys, like whatever you want to find. I'm not sure what the money that Tyrell Dotson is really going to command. I don't know if it's going to be really a ton, but I could definitely see him being a more budget friendly deal. He made $4.2 million this year, but I don't think he's going to make nearly that much. But I think he's an immediate impact player. Devin Bush is a free agent. Let him walk, go away. Who gives a fuck about him at this point? It's just a name, I feel like, that we're talking about. But again, Tyrell Dotson is one guy, definitely is a big circling on my board if I'm Cleveland, as a guy who's not going to make a ton of money, but I think is going to make a pretty big impact all over the field. He played again for Miami and Buffalo this past season, and he was pretty good with both those guys. So that's one guy I definitely want to see them kind of target this year.
Yeah, I mean, like what is a contract for like a Landon Roberts? Like what is he getting? He's a Steelers free agent this year, I think. I that's a solid player. I mean, I know the reason why I know that name is because he's a name I have eyeballed for the 49ers if we lose Dre Greenlaw. And so there's linebacker is definitely an interesting, like you can make a big upgrade to your team for with budget friendly money here. You know, you don't have to go out and pay Chase Young $16 million a year on the line. You can go out and get a linebacker for 8 or 9.
Right.
What did Eric Kendrick sign with the Cowboys for? Wasn't, it
It
wasn't a
wasn't
ton of money.
no, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot at all.
You could go get Devondre Campbell if you want him to quit on your team.
There's that too. And then I think the last position group, the secondary as a whole, was one that you definitely wanted to talk about pretty heavily. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, it rounds out the majority of your outside corners. Martin Emerson has shown flashes, and then you have Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill at your safety positions. You already kind of brought up Thornhill as a cut candidate. What did you want to do with the rest of this team though? Because Greg Newsome has played below average, seems like year in and year out for a corner position, playing opposite of Ward. You don't need another superstar because 2 superstar corners, you're not going to pay both of them. That's not exactly what we're asking of you right here. We're just asking you to be serviceable. And again, he's just been below average. If you can be average while you have a superstar in Denzel Ward, that's okay with me. I'm 100% okay with that. And we see the corner position at in free agency year in and year out produce a singular or a couple different free agents who are on budget deals who play really well. And again, are at least serviceable. So I think if you're gonna, depending on the money that he's gonna end up making, man, I think there should be damn near every single team in the fucking league that should be targeting Jordan Lewis. That type of guy is everyone should be targeting someone like him. I'm curious on the money he's going to make because he does primarily play slot corner. That is his role. He is not a outside corner. But even some of these other guys, right? Mike Hilton, who's getting up there in age, Stephon Gilmore, does he want to play another year? And how much money is he really going to want to make? That's the question. If he's going to want to make a lot of money again, you just kind of sweep it off to the side. Outside of that, the amount of good low budget corners this year are kind of, you're picking bottom of the barrel type guys to really try to get something going. But again, I think everyone should be targeting some guys like Jordan Lewis. That everyone should target him.
I told you last week every team that needed corner help, I was going to mention Jordan Lewis for. I really like Mike Hilton.
Yeah.
I don't know what he makes. Like, I don't know, is that a 9 or $10 million a year corner? Or is that like a $15 million corner?
So
Byron Murphy was really good this year.
yep. Mike Hilton made 6 million
I,
this year, so it's kind of,
you know,
you're definitely right in the middle of, what does he actually want this year, depending on, how he's really played. But, considering how the entire defense played as a whole for Angles, I don't know if is he really going to be looked upon super kindly. But he did.
Mooney Ward is a free agent and he didn't play well this year coming off a big contract. So it's just, there's options out there. It just depends what Andrew Berry is going to be able to do with this cap space and how much he's going to be able to free up.
Absolutely. Talking now about the team as a whole, was there anything else that you wanted to cover with the team to really fix it up? But the coaching staff, I still think stays. Kevin Stefanski is a great coach. I think that the owners just have their hands in too many places trying to get fucking Deshaun Watson to play too often. And now hopefully they have an opportunity to, with coming in with, this is how we see it. Coming in with a new quarterback, you bring back Nick Chubb, you cut a couple guys in your offensive line, replace them with some of the draft pick players, budget wide receivers to come in. Obviously, your tight end stays, David Njoku. We didn't really talk about that, but it's David Njoku. Bring in another edge rusher again, whether that's a budget one, and again, that's really hard to come by, or you bring one in through the draft, which you can find late round edge rushers to come in and really fill a role pretty well. Budget linebacker is definitely where you want to look, and then that corner position, maybe you want to spend a little bit more money there rather than all the other places. Again, Cleveland's kind of limited on what they could do. Negative $29 million in cap space. Cut a couple guys. Jarek Wills could definitely be on the cut candidate. Jack Conklin, cut candidate, but DeJuan Jones slides in. See what he can do on an entire year. I know he got hurt in like week 11 this last year. So, hopefully Cleveland can kind of figure it out because they're a good team that their window is quickly. It is quickly closing. As bad as this team was this year, the roster isn't abysmal at least. Was there anything else that you want to cover?
No, I mean, they got a new offensive coordinator. They promoted a guy who He's famous. There's that clip of him running around. He's up in the booth and he gets on the phone. And I don't know what player he's on the phone with, but he screams at him, "Do your effing job." So that seems like something exciting for the Browns fans. They need a coordinator that can get out there and hold the team accountable. So I mean it's a talented roster already. So if they can nail, if Shedeur or Cam Ward can come in and give you a Drake May effort, if they can give you a Bo Nix effort, it doesn't have to be Jaden, you know. If you could get Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers level quarterback play next year, I think the team could be pretty good. So
All right. Well, next week we are going to be covering the New York Giants. That's going to be a little bit exciting because there's a lot of holes everywhere. And we won't be talking about a quarterback most likely in the first couple of picks because those guys might already be gone at that point unless they're going to trade up. So, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more exciting to talk about, a lot more cap space to talk about, a lot more holes to talk about. So, make sure you stay tuned for that one next week.